Hello and welcome to another episode of The Naked Turner. Today I'm going to be turning a small maple canister, and I'm going to be trying to put this small stone, which happens to be a piece of jasper, into the lid of this canister. It's not exactly the right stone for this. It doesn't have a flat edge. The cabochon portion or curved portion of it has very little flat edge, so I'm going to see what I can do, and what I'll probably end up doing is scuffing the back of this piece of jasper up a little bit with some sandpaper, and then adhering it down in with a tiny amount of epoxy or CA glue, probably epoxy, just because the CA glue tends to be a little bit more brittle than what I would like to have holding onto this. So I'll mix up an epoxy that's good for stone as well as woods, stone, metal, and put a little bit of epoxy on the back of this and set it in. So I have a piece of maple chucked up here, and let's get started. Okay, there we go, forward gear. This I'm going to spin up pretty high. I have it on a steb center that's grabbed by my easy chuck. I'm turning up here around 2100 RPM. I have a very sharpened roughing gouge here that's extremely sharp, and okay, I just actually shouldered off the two ends with my homemade very narrow parting knife. This is a little less than a 1/16 of an inch parting knife, so I'm able to get right in here real tight up against the two ends and square off a shoulder. That'll help when I go to put this in my scrolling jaw chuck. Okay, so there's some nice figuring kind of right in this area here, so I'm thinking that what I'm going to do is work on making the lid portion out of this section right here. So first thing I'm going to do is shape the lid, and I'm kind of feeling like, because this see if this will focus up here, because this cabochon doesn't really have as much of a square edge to it as I would like. I think I'm going to make sort of a little knob that this sits into the top of, with a very shallow mortise in the end of the knob, and then that will break way to the lid, and then I'll do the canister. So let's get started shaping that knob right here on the end. Switching over to my 1/2 inch bowl gouge. Okay, so I just took a Forstner bit and made a small hole here with the Forstner bit, and then took my narrow parting tool and just opened the edge of that hole up a tiny little bit so that I could get a nice fit on this stone. So now what I'm going to do before I epoxy that in is do some sanding on this, but it looks like it's going to be a real pretty top for this vessel, or for this canister. So now what I'm going to do is do a little refining on here and flatten out this bottom section a little bit so it's more of a flat top, and do some decoration on it or something like that. So while I'm doing that, you can kind of watch what's going on here. I'm using my narrow parting tool to create some spaces where I can do a little bit of decoration on the knob, a bead, and now I'm using my Cindy Drozda tool and then back to my narrow parting tool. And now I'm creating the definition of the tenon and the edge of what will become the mortise. Then in looking at it, I decided I wanted to add a couple decorative pieces. Bringing up the speed to right around 2100 RPM. Got my parting tool. I'm not cutting all the way up against this shoulder. I'm leaving a tiny, I'm leaving a tiny little shoulder there. Just for those of you who haven't seen this in my other videos before, I'm leaving a tiny shoulder because that shows me right where the edge of my tenon is, and that'll show me the size of the mortise that I need to make. Okay, jump in, and then I like to make a half a blade width extra, and then I wiggle back and forth. Okay. So that's going to look something like that. That is going to be pretty nice. A little cabochon on top of this lid. So now I'll go about hollowing this out, and I'll show you that process. I'm using my Forstner bit to drill this piece out. It makes for a lot quicker hollowing. And now I'm measuring to see how deep I need to go. I'm stopping right around 4 3/8 of an inch deep. So now I have this tiny little lip here, and what I'm going to be doing is doing some shear scraping at a little bit of an angle to open up this hole. I'm doing some shear scraping at a little bit of a taper using my Cindy Drozda tool and refining the interior edge. Now I'm doing a little sanding, checking my fit, and then I'll do some more sanding until I'm happy with the fit that I have. And that gives me lots of opportunity to refit. So now I have it fitting pretty well. And what I'm going to do is bring in my tool rest, and I'm going to get, and I have my tailstock in and lock down. And now you can see I have a little bit of a difference in these two cylinders because of the drilling. So now, and that's part of why I leave the tube wall just a little thicker, like a little over 1/8. So I can come back now and utilize my skew chisel, bring the speed way up here, and I kind of want to move that a little bit that way and come up to right about there. Using my skew chisel to bring this back into a complete cylinder, matching the top with the body of the canister. That's almost perfectly round now. And what I've done here, let's go back here a little bit, and I want to make sure all my grain is nicely aligned. And hard to see now where it is. Okay, I think that's pretty close. Obviously, because I've taken a small amount out, it can't ever be exactly lined up, but I try to get it as close as possible. So some sanding, and that'll be beautiful. All right, I'll do a little sanding on this, put some finish on, epoxy the stone in. That's the next. Okay, so I've done a little shaping down here on the bottom of the foot, so that I now have sort of a I don't know what you'd call this, sort of an apothecary shape. And now I'm going to be parting this off, leaving about a 3/16 foot down here on the bottom. But first I've got to do some sanding and maybe even a little tiny bit of a couple burnish marks on this. So that's what I'm going to go about doing next, is a few little burnish marks. But I don't want to compromise the thin wall of this piece, so I have to do it carefully. This is is a D string from a guitar with 2 handles on it and a D string. Getting a nice dark burn there. Okay, so I'm getting ready to put on some finish here now. So I have some epoxy mixed up. I have scuffed up the back of the stone with some emery cloth. Now I'm going to drop this in here carefully. Push it down. There we go. And then I'm going to put it back in between centers and put a little piece of foam on the end and use my live center to push it in and compress it a little bit while it... Okay, so now I have it pressure blocked in here. I'll let it set up for about 5-10 minutes, and then this piece will be done.